You said in your MDS there was a moment where you had an epiphany on how to make it work, right? Can you say what that is?
What we ended up doing with Magazine Discount Center was building a mousetrap where the consumer thought that they were on the magazine brand's page to subscribe. The way that I did it was...
We are here with Ryan Alovis. Ryan is the CEO and founder of LensDirect, which is an extremely fast-growing vision care brand.
LensDirect was started by my family in 1992 as a mail-order contact lens company. It wasn't some big business. It actually was horrible and challenging. It's going to suck, and that is all right. I think you should find joy in the suck.
Do you agree with Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point? If you could stay in it long enough, there'll be a tipping point and it'll sort of take your business to the next level. Like, did you have a tipping point with LensDirect?
I could say that with absolute certainty, there were clear tipping points. Whether it was
So Ryan, welcome aboard, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. And also here with Dan Castle, the ever incredible Dan Castle, always here to share the wisdom as well. Ryan, I think the first thing that I always like to understand, right, is before the business comes the human. And everybody that we've had on this podcast has a few different paths on how they got into entrepreneurship, right? Some people come from a family of entrepreneurs. Some people, hated their lives at a certain point in time, taken the underground for too long. And they're like, you know what? I need to start something of my own. So I'm very curious about yourself. How did you get into this world of doing your own thing, and what planted that seed in your mind?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I'm actually part of the first point, but I don't think that's not like the whole answer, because the whole answer is you could become, you could be part of a family of entrepreneurs and you just want to get a desk job somewhere and you're happy with that, which is fine too. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs for generations, actually. I grew up around that. I would watch my father run multiple businesses and open multiple businesses, and not in some like formalized way where he's going to, private equity and venture capital funds. My father, I would see it. He would put money, his money where his mouth was. And I think being around that, I was super interested in it. I fell in love with it early on, super romantic about business. I would work at the stores. If it was a movie rental business, I'd be standing on a shoebox and working the cashier, working the register. Or when my father had optical stores, I would be on the corner handing out flyers. I loved it. I really appreciated it. There was no like macro sort of, man, I hope to be my own boss and have my own schedule. That never even occurred to me. What occurred to me was, this makes me feel good. My father, I see him, he's a leader, and I see how people respond to him, and I feel like I could do that. But it was his ability to sort of kind of just dive into something. And I don't want to say recklessly. I think he just felt so confident in his capabilities that he went for it. And I think that rubbed off on me. And I think people my whole life would be like, hey, you're good at business and you're good at this. So I think inherently I started thinking I was good too. And maybe I wasn't even good. I just thought I was good because they told me I was good. But that was sort of how I feel like I got into it.
Amazing. I always say there's always an activator, and there are normally two activators, either pain or inspiration, right? Pain can be an equal activator where you hate your situation so much you're forced to find a better path. And that means you might not need the guidance or have the light yet, but you seek it. And then another activator is what you said, right? Inspiration. So you being able to see your father be a certain type of person that instilled belief in you. Your activator was inspiration, right? So that's incredible. Equally as powerful.
That's part of the recipe, but also there was a part of the recipe that was very much driven by, I clearly enjoy making money. I didn't come from a rich family. We're comfortable, right? I had all the things I needed, but not always, and not everything I ever wanted. And that was completely cool too. But I was not always given the same things that other people I know were given. And I was sort of like, fuck that. I could do this. I'm so much hungrier than you. Like, I could do this. And early on, my first real jump into business was nightlife. And we'll get into that, but that set the tone for, I think, my whole life, to be honest.
Incredible. I want to learn more about that. Dan also had a very similar start, I believe, in nightlife myself as well. Very similar. Talk to me about that. How did you get into nightlife and how did that shape you as a person?
I think nightlife, the people that I know that were in it and also are still in it, but those that have left that world, I think there's something you learn in the genres of nightlife that you simply can't get anywhere else. And it was early on. It was before social media, really. I mean, there was no Instagram. This was before MySpace. But nightlife teaches you a lot. Nightlife teaches you about your own promotions, right? Like your own publicity, creating your own brand and buzz, business, securing a deal, a venue, and negotiating with owners of nightclubs, hiring the talent, whether it's a DJ, a door person, whether it's a cashier, and then execution, of course. And there's other things that happen. And beyond execution, when you're the one running the party and throwing the party, you're also dealing with tremendous egos of people that essentially work for you. And these are promoters that work for you. And you have to make them feel good. And these are the guys that think they're the coolest. And they want to get a certain level of respect. For them, it was more about being cool than financials. For me, it was more about financials and logistics than being cool. And I think that's why I was able to be good at it. But nightlife, everyone I know that was in nightlife that I either worked with or supported, worked for, there's a chip in them that you will not get anywhere else. There's no way in hell it's coming for you. You get it in nightlife. And clearly you guys would agree there.
I remember, I loved the negotiating with the owners of the venues, but, and saying, okay, listen, I want dollar kamikaze shots. I know you're not going to make a lot of money, but that's how I'm going to get everyone to get over here. And no one else is offering that. This is New York City where drinks are $15. And I want to do the parties that are fun and less pretentious. So that was my niche, was the less pretentious, more like you graduate college, you're looking to meet someone, those types of parties. But then there were these other types of parties that were like bottles and models and celebrities, right? And that ended up becoming Noah and Jason for Tao, right? So they went that route and I went this route, and we were competing like on the same nights, a few blocks away from each other, but we were both doing well because we just had completely different niches. Obviously, they did a lot better. They became the biggest nightlife.
Well, they went all in. They went all in, and you didn't go all in.
Well, actually, my parents said to me, they go, how much are you making being a promoter? This was right after I graduated college. I was making $40,000 working at Lehman Brothers in banking, which was a very good salary at the time in 2000. And I was making $60,000 promoting. And my parents who owned a business were like, we'll pay you $60,000 to quit. And I said, okay. And I went and worked for them.
I did not get that offer from my parents. That's a good offer, though. Maybe I would have taken it. Maybe not, actually. I don't know if I would have. Who knows?
They just didn't want me, in that world. But my world was fine. It wasn't like there was nothing illegal going on. They shouldn't like me in nightlife. They thought it was not of character or whatever it was that they thought, they're very conservative. My father's British. And so they just didn't understand it. Well, I was up so late every night and going to collect cash at the like 3 a.m. at the end. They didn't like that at all.
It's easy not to like that. As a parent, you could see why it's easy not to like that.
And I didn't argue with them. I'd made good money for a couple of years, and I was like, okay, I want to work for you guys. I want to learn from you. And that's when I went into their business. But yeah, nightlife, I probably learned more in those few years promoting than I did in college when it comes to business.
I didn't learn anything about business in college. I did not learn one thing. Zero. I mean, honestly, it was all from that and experiences and building your own buzzes, logistics and people. And it's an incredible, melting pot of learnings, of real business learnings. And some people sink or swim. Some people get addicted to that nightlife world where it's the drinking and like access to people. The ones that were truly successful at it didn't care about that.
Yeah,
me too. I never drank
because I felt like I had to make sure that those nights
had to be in control.
Yeah, and so Ryan said something really interesting. So he said, to be good in that world, you have to basically build trust with a lot of people. They have to, when they see a Ryan Alovis party or Dan Castle party, they need to know what they're going to get. That, okay, I'm not going to have a problem getting in, but there's going to be a great crowd. There's going to be some great deals at the bar. It'll be a great DJ. You have a lot you have to deal with. And that trust and building trust with customers is basically my first example of customer service on a very large scale. And I use a million lessons from that time in my life. And I don't regret being in that world at all.
I always say going to university is normally the same time you get into nightlife, right? But one of them is actually the real university, right? You have university, the institution, and then you have nightlife, which is actually your real university. But sometimes it can be so fun that it ends up consuming some people and they stay in there for way too long. It's my own personal opinion, but you can stay in nightlife for way too long and get consumed by it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to walk away. I mean, it is really great money. What happens in nightlife, if you're really good at it, is you're making X and all your friends have a job and they're making Y, right? And then suddenly a few years goes by and that gap, it goes like this. And you better be able to make the right move for yourself. Otherwise, it's going to keep going like this. Clearly, Dan had the same sort of, thought process, or at least his parents were able to encourage him and motivate him to make that shift. I just said, fuck it, I'm out. I really didn't want it. I envisioned my life with a home and a backyard and, kids and Friday nights, being able to stay home with them and have dinner. That's how I envisioned my life 20, 30 years from now, traditional, and nightlife for the most part does not support that. Maybe for some it does at the highest level, but not for the rest of us. So that was a big driver in that move as well. And I think your parents made the right decision.
Yeah. And by the way, not everybody can make that transition from nightlife to business at your level.
It is so hard. It is now thinking back, I would say it's almost impossible. And with children, it would have been actually impossible. Without children, it was almost impossible.
Because you're taking such a big pay cut, right? You've got the lifestyle, you've got traditionally what society would tell you need to be happy in nightlife. You've got a level of freedom, you've got, beautiful women around you, you've got, you're going out for free pretty much because you run the show, right? And for you to step back and go into the grueling world of business, which eventually, as you can all see, ends up being way more rewarding. But it's that little chasm of pain you need to go through. And talk to me about that, Ryan. So what was your transition like? So you got into nightlife, you learned the social skills you need to, you dealt with the egos, you got the t-shirts and you've been there, you did that, right? You got what you needed from it. So now there's this incredible transition to the grueling world of business, but a very rewarding world of business. What did that look like?
Well, I mean, at the time, and I think a lot of people would agree in business, or at least entrepreneurs, you don't realize how grueling it is when you're in the grueling. You're just sort of like, this is my normal. And when you're renting an apartment and you don't have a family, grueling is fairly okay. It's that transition when you have a family and everything that's really scary and hard. When I made the move from nightlife to business, I was kind of doing both at the same time. So, admittedly, it was actually easier for me than probably others. I launched a company when I was in nightlife called Magazine Discount Center. At the time, it was a destination for people to subscribe to magazines, Sports Illustrated, Good Housekeeping, which is the least sexy business in the world. No one's ever I want to sell magazine subscriptions. But I did. And I was in nightlife. I was promoting. I knew that I wanted out. I launched Magazine Discount Center. And this was pre-Shopify. This was me dealing with developers in Bangalore, India, in the middle of the night on Skype. I mean, it was fucking dreadful. It was so awful. But remember, when you're in it, you don't know how bad it is. You're just in it and you're doing it. You're like, there's no way I can fail. So I was in nightlife. I was doing the Bangalore, India Skype messaging for Magazine Discount Center. The magazine business was making $0. I didn't understand it. I was really frustrated with it, but I saw the other guys making money in my space, which helped me think, okay, there's a light here somewhere. I just don't know where it is yet or how to turn it on. So while Magazine Discount Center was making no money and it was just fucking awful. And then I had nightlife, which I was still doing well in. I launched another company called Birthday Party Booker, which was one of the first direct way to basically book your birthday in New York City on a website, which really no one was doing at the time. And the nightlife for me had become birthday driven. You get that birthday, that person's bringing 30 people out. You get 20 of those in a weekend, you're a made man, you're good to go. So I launched Birthday Party Booker. Actually, it started making real money, and it allowed me to make no money in Magazine Discount Center, which allowed me to grow that business. I wasn't taking it. I was putting it right back into marketing. And I phased out of nightlife that way. And then I ended up a year after I launched Birthday Party Booker, maybe 2 years, whatever, selling that for literally cash. One of the owners of one of the nightclubs I worked with came to my office with just like a box of cash, which was really interesting. And that's when things, I wouldn't say got great, but I was able to then really go all in on Magazine Discount Center.
I love that. And for the people listening, I think there's this notion that when you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to drop everything, quit your job, and, dive right in and take all this crazy risk. And I think the biggest thing that you've just mentioned there, Ryan, is you kind of layered it on. You were doing what you were doing and you continue to do it, but you allocated a portion of your time to look at what's next, right? And you would invest your time to look at what's next, and you would use what you currently were doing in order to fund, finance, and make those mistakes while still doing what you're doing. And there was a sacrifice at that time. You were probably up super late from your nightlife and working in the day. You probably had a compression of time, right? You were oversubscribed at that point, I'm guessing, weren't you?
Well, I would say like the way that I did it was a calculated risk, where I had sort of still these things that were doing and helping me. But the big thing I thought at the time was going to be this other business. But yeah, I'm not saying don't go all in. I think to win, you have to actually go all in, but you can also go all in while like kind of still doing that other thing and making sure that, you're not like, I was never going to go homeless, guys. Like, I don't think any one of us is ever going to be in that position, but I was definitely making no money. And I remember like I had a piggy bank. I'm not kidding. I had one of those, those plastic bottles, those big ones that used to have maybe in your closet. Any of you guys have those like big ones? I ended up using that piggy bank because that's how weird things work. But yeah, calculated risk, I think, is really important when it comes to entrepreneurship. And blinders. There's other stuff. There's so many other fucking things.
I know. It's like a formula, right? And I think it's about asking the right questions versus getting the answers. Because like the better questions you ask, I think leads you down to path of finding out what those answers are, rather than giving someone answers in like a little microcosm, because each thing has its own nuance, followed by a whole other things in terms of what actually makes you successful. But I think you can uncover a lot of these things with a story. So now that you're building Magazine Discount Center, obviously you made a pivot to LensDirect, right? Is that because MDS wasn't working, or what was the reason that you made that pivot, or was it kind of capped from its growth?
So just so we understand, my family many years ago, my family's been in the optical industry for over 100 years. My great grandfather selling frames that have a push card on the Lower East Side of New York City. So like we've been in the optical business forever. Stories of me as a child handing out those flyers and telling people to go buy glasses at my family's store. LensDirect was started by my family in 1992 as a mail order contact lens company. All right. It was a mail order contact lens company. We started it super early. It wasn't some big, business. It actually was horrible and challenging because the manufacturers weren't ready for online. They really liked, the eye doctors selling those contact lenses. So what ended up happening is my family had sold LensDirect. And when I had started the Magazine Discount Center business in 2006, we did not own LensDirect at the time. So here's how it happened. 2006, Magazine Discount Center goes live. It's a zero sum for 2 years, 3 years. I'm spending my days staring at my competitors, the ones that are doing well. How are they doing it? What are they doing? What does it look like? Everything under the sun. Because I got very competitive. It was like, fuck those guys. If they're doing it and I know what they look like, I could do that shit. I can definitely do that shit. And I remember staring at them, and 3 years into Magazine Discount Center, it worked. I remember it was like a December. I did something that was, somewhat similar to what one or two of the other guys was doing. And now I know why they were doing it. It worked. And we suddenly went gangbusters, 2008, 2009. And the business started taking off. I fell in love with the subscription business because there's auto renew, there's a continuity play. And I remember speaking to my family, I'm going, we didn't own LensDirect at the time. And I go, I know what I'm doing now. I can build this thing. And I actually went out and approached the owner who had bought it from my family. And I asked him, I go, could we do this? I feel like I can get it done. And he met me at a bank in Roslyn on the corner of Glen Cove Road and Northern Boulevard. I'll never forget it. And he sold me back LensDirect for pennies on the dollar. And I will never forget that. And then at that moment, we owned 80% of LensDirect. We ended up eventually buying him out completely and owning 100% of it. But it was at that moment in 2009 that I got back LensDirect for my family and for myself. And that was a really big moment.
That's incredible. Did he sell it to you because he felt like did you charm him? Did he feel bad for you? How did you convince him in Roslyn to hand over that IP?
I don't think he believed in it the way that I did. And, I think he was able to understand the success that I was having with the other business. And maybe if he still owned a portion of it, it was better than owning 100% of it. And I think that's really important in business. Ultimately, he was a really nice man. I don't think it made sense for them to own. They had their chance with it. I don't think it worked. The stars were aligned. I think any other day in any other week, month, or year, it would not have worked. And I would not be probably sitting down and even having this conversation with you guys. But at that moment, it worked. And I'll be forever grateful that it worked.
It's incredible. Sometimes you just need a good person on your journey, right? To make the right decision and help you light your path.
You do. And believe me, it wasn't like we bought it and it worked. That was also shitty for years. So that's the common denominator here, is that it's usually shitty for many years.
Their timing was pretty bad because then 2009-10 came around and that was like the economic crisis. And that's when my business went out.
None of this helped.
Yeah, this was the worst economic crisis. 2009-10 in New York. I remember I was like, I got to give up I had one of my companies, I had to close it down. And it was basically like, the whole economy was changing. All the specialty stores were going out of business. I was in apparel and fashion, and there was no way that I could survive unless I switched my entire business over to department stores, which I wasn't willing to do. So I just shut it down. So it's just so interesting that you're at the same exact time, you're like starting something and I'm ending something, and you can't control the economy. That's out of our hands.
And you can't control a lot of stuff. I mean, all the things that have happened over the course of 15 years, 20 years, I mean, as far as 2020, you can't control any of this stuff. But I think, again, like the entrepreneur doesn't think about that stuff. Like, we don't know what that even means. The economy, if you would have sat me down in 2009 or 2006, you're like, dude, the economy, I would be hysterical laughing. I go, I don't even know what that word means.
Right. Yeah, because the entrepreneurial mindset is we don't make up excuses for our failures. We don't say like, I failed because of the government or I failed because of inflation. Entrepreneurs just do not think that way. We think we make mistakes or we just didn't have the right strategy. And then we just go do it again in a different way or find something else. Another challenge. That's just the entrepreneurial mindset. It's an amazing mindset.
It's a weird world. I always say in the world of entrepreneurship, you really just got to hope at the end of the whole thing, you had a little bit more good days than bad days. That's really how it is, because there's a lot of bad days. Just make sure you got a couple more good days than bad days. And it's, that's a success, honestly, in my opinion. I also think we don't think about failure in all of the businesses that I've ever touched, been involved in, whatever. I never was like, this could fail. And that may be insane, or it might be the reason I was able to go over with it. You have stamina for many years, because failing, I don't even know, what are you talking about? Like, I never thought of that. That was not in my pure view, as they say.
You said in MDS, there was a moment where you had an epiphany on how to make it work, right? Now, 2 questions. Firstly, can you say what that is? And if not, could you provide a lens of thought that you were thinking to then find the right thing?
Yeah, I could say it now. I mean, that business is long gone. We sold that in 2015. What we ended up doing with Magazine Discount Center was building a mousetrap where the consumer thought that they were on the magazine brand's page to subscribe. You would go on Google, you would type Sports Illustrated, and there you would see sportsillustrated.com-sub.biz, right? You go, oh my God, that's Sports Illustrated. I'm going to buy a magazine. That was us. No one knew it was us.
Wild.
We had a subdomain and no one knew. So suddenly we were capturing, Time Inc. bought us. That's how good we were at this thing. And it took me years to do it. And it was like, suddenly the lights went on and the air was flowing through my body. And it was at that moment. So there was a sense of, legal trickery, we'll say.
And how did you arrive at this conclusion? Was it just through relentless research of competitors or just a lot of trial and error until you landed on the gold mine or the jackpot?
There was definitely trial and error with marketing and doing this, but let's change this design on the website. Let's add this color. And those things happen to have an effect at scale, right? When you have so much volume, changing the color of a button could be, an uptick in your conversion rate. But at that point, it was absolutely the first thing you said. Looking at the other guys, after all the other things I tried, looking at the other guys and going, what are they doing that I am not doing? Oh, they're doing that. And it's clearly working. Let's try. And we did. We tried. And I was having dialogue. I have no problem reaching out to people at other companies and trying to understand things. And that has been really important, I think, in my growth and in business for me, is having conversation and being a little smarter. There's a story many years ago. This is interesting. Like my family, my father, there was an optical store about a block or two away from his optical store. And there was always a line down their block and not a line down my father's store down the block. So I think one day after work, my father and my uncle, they went through their competitors' garbage and looked at what they were ordering for the optical store. Why are they doing X and why are we doing Y? That stuff makes all the difference.
It just goes to show, I think nowadays we have like this online world where everyone thinks they're making millions from behind the laptop. Like, you got to remember the physical part of it. We're humans, right? And at the end of the day, getting outside of your screen is where the magic happens. Then on your screen is where you implement what you learn from the outside, speaking to people, interacting with others, right? And are you a proponent, Ryan, of imitate, then iterate by what you're saying?
1,000 bazillion infinity, or as my kids would say, Googleplex %.
Oh, wow. Googleplex %. Okay. So there we go.
That's 3%. Yeah.
Imitate, then iterate. So find a winning formula first, apply that formula in your own lens, then you start to venture out and test the different things that work for you.
I think so. I know who I am. I'm not Elon Musk. I am so not Elon Musk. I don't want to be Elon Musk, but I know I'm not Elon Musk. I don't have that sort of, I'm not creating the next, flying sneaker. Like I want to build a good business, and I want to build a business that can stand the test of time. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm a guy who loves business, and I think there's no harm in being inspired and motivated by those in your industry that have successfully done something that you want to do better.
So you're not trying to build the first flying contact lens out here?
Yeah, Elon, that's on you, dog. Yeah, you can do that.
Cool. Just making sure.
You guys know, like I'm the exact opposite of Ryan, and that's what's so interesting about entrepreneurship, because there's no like what one path is the right path. So he sees something that's working and then he does it better. I look at what everybody is doing and I do the exact opposite. And so I'm more in the Elon Musk type of inventor, doing something that's never patented, something that's never been done before. Cause I don't feel like I'm smart enough or I have the money to compete with people that are already successful. Ryan can do that. I can't do that.
I actually would argue the opposite. I think what you do is harder and you need to be smarter to be able to get a patent and do X, Y, and Z. Like, I think you do the things that you're good at doing, and what you're good at doing, I think, is actually really more impressive and harder than maybe what guys like me are doing, right? Like something different, that takes a lot of guts, and it's a Hail Mary. It's a toss up.
I think the opposite. I think what you do is so difficult, and I would never be able.
We're just so enamored with each other.
I love it. I think the main thing that I've learned with speaking to founders like yourself, Dan and Ryan, is the number one thing is awareness. And for anybody listening, there are people with different archetypes of personalities, right? There are some people, I call it archaeologists and architects. Dan is more of an architect. He can lay the foundation and see what's happening and build into that reality. Ryan, I believe you're more of an archaeologist, where you're just there with your magnifying glass and your clippers, and you're kind of like clearing the way, trying to figure out what the right way kind of is. And I identify more with yourself, Ryan. I'm more of an archaeologist myself than an architect. But I think the number one thing that I've learned from you guys and just everybody else I'm speaking to as well is having awareness about who you are and understanding there is a path, regardless of whether you are not maybe the inventor type of person, but you can figure stuff out by imitating, then iterating. Any additions there, Ryan?
I never thought of me as an archaeologist, but I'm ready to, get my hands dirty and brush off that dirt off the bone outside. I'm good with that. I think you definitely need to be very self-aware. I think as you get older, it's easier to be self-aware. As a young person, it's not very easy to be self-aware. I think you're just sort of maybe at time drinking your Kool-Aid. But as you get seasoned, you really know and understand your skill set. I love to lead businesses. I love to lead people. And I don't get into the weeds actually as much as maybe, you would think. In the beginning, you have to get into the weeds. You have to get into the weeds. You have to know all the little things that don't work, that do work, and keep reiterating and try to make it work. There's a level of success that can come from being inspired and motivated by those that are doing it really well. And there's no shame in that game at all. I think you do the things that are right for you. And in 5-10 years, that may not be right for me either. And by the way, the whole being inspired, those are moments in time. Once you do that, you still also have to build 1,000 other things that make the business work, right? There's endless stuff that make a business run and grow. And I just think when you're at that starting point, you got to do what you got to do what you have to do to win.
The starting point is interesting. Like, you should probably have the same experience that I have, but even though we have such different paths, how many people do you know that have come to you that have been in corporate for 10, 15, 20 years, and they say, Ryan, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur. I'm ready to start a business. I'm going to do it.
And then?
Yeah. So,
nothing happens.
Nothing happens. And, or they quit their amazing job and then they fail. And then they want to go back to their amazing job, which is no longer available. And so this goes back to what Ryan said earlier on in the podcast. There's no reason for you to go completely all in on anything. It doesn't mean that you're sacrificing passion. Let's say you have a job and you are ready to be an entrepreneur. That's how I was at Lehman Brothers, and I was ready to be an entrepreneur. But it doesn't mean that I can't start a side hustle that doesn't take away from my income stream so that I can make better decisions about that startup. When you make decisions under stress, under duress, financial danger, right? Of your, like you say, you weren't going to be homeless. I always felt like I was going to be homeless. That's just my complex. I always felt like if I failed, I was going to end up homeless. Even to this day, when we're driving by and we see a homeless person, I tell my kids, I was like, there's a very fine line between where I'm sitting right now in this fancy car with this amazing family and that person. Like, I felt like I was very close to that several times. And I felt like it really could happen. Even if it wasn't really going to happen, I felt like it could. And I hope entrepreneurs out there understand you don't need to quit your job to start something. You got to find that balance. Ryan was showing you, like, he was promoting and we're starting to catch up to him that we're in business, and he realized where this was going and he got out at the exact right time. I was pulled out at the exact right time. We both knew that it was okay, that we needed to leave, but you have to know when to leave. Don't give up an amazing job. Even if you hate your job, but it's giving you good money to live, let them pay you while you create your dream.
Yeah. Well, there's a few ways I agree with that. Obviously, some might argue that the only way to do it is if you go all in and you feel the pressure and you got to make it work. I don't think that's a fair thing to say. I think that if you can make it work while also, having that income, there's 24 hours in the day, just get it done. You want to get it done, you get it done. You said something interesting. When people come to me that have a job, and a lot of my close friends have always come to me or would come up like, oh yeah, I'm ready to, I'm quitting. I want to do my own thing. 99.9% of them do nothing, right? They just stay exactly where they are. And that's cool too, because don't fake it, right? Like be self-aware, right? Be your authentic self. Some people are not meant to run a business. It's really stressful. And what you said was, people that do it and then they go back to their job immediately because it didn't work immediately, and they want that income again. This was taught to me very early on with a failed company that was in the home security space. And the home security company that I was going to be a marketing partner with, they came to my office and they sat me down, and I asked for more money for every alarm I sold. And this is a true story, real story. And I'll never forget this conversation. And he's like, I can't give you more money. This is where you're going to start. If you do well, you go here. You're not going to start here and do poorly, and I can bring you down here. Because Ryan, he says, luxury once tasted becomes a necessity. It's really hard. And it's so unbelievably powerful and true and all these great things. Because once you have a great job that pays you boatloads of money and you've got your 401k and your 50 vacation days, and you go and quit and you start your business, it doesn't work immediately. It's because you've been so set up for failure. And that's because luxury once tasted does become a necessity. You're not going to change your lifestyle at 40. It's really hard to tell your 2 kids, 3 kids, your wife, we're changing it all. I'm starting that business. Yeah, good luck. It's really hard.
That's why it's so important that once you do start to get success, your lifestyle grows at a much slower rate than your success grows. Because eventually it will come, right? If you stick in the game. I remember there was one quote I heard. It says, time in the game beats timing in the game, right? So the longer you are in the game, you're eventually going to hit inflection points, right? If you just stick at it for a long enough time, just like yourself, Ryan, you went through all these iterations of nothing working for such a long time. I've been there. I was actually at a conference, and this is something I'll say. It's like, there was a young entrepreneur there. And I just wanted to show the Stripe because, inside your Stripe account, you can kind of tell over a course of a period of time how it goes. And even when I looked at my own journey, it was like a flat line for like 2 years. And then you get these little inflection points where things start to grow, right? Obviously, you've probably been through those inflection points, but when it happens, it kind of all happens at once, and it always is in waves. Is that accurate, Dan and Ryan?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. It takes years and then it works, and you better move quick and reinvest and build that company that you've dreamt of building because you have your opportunity. I don't know if Dan would agree. I think, I've seen this graph. I think it was like, what people think success looks like. I've seen it. I'm like, that's so smart. And like, it goes like this, right? But then there's like the reality, and it's like a squiggly line that looks like someone took a shit on the page, like whatever. I'm like, that's how it really is. That's the thing.
Momentum. Grab onto momentum and never let go. And obviously,
momentum is that's everything. A good word. Yeah. That's an important word.
Yeah.
In business, in relationship. Oh, that's a good one.
Ryan, do you agree with Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point? Do you agree that at some point, if you could stay in it long enough, there'll be a tipping point and it'll sort of take your business to the next level? Like, has that something happened with LensDirect when you started it? Where it was like sort of slow and then something just happened? It could be to nowadays, Joe Rogan talks about a company on his podcast. That's their tipping point. That's just one example. But did you have a tipping point with LensDirect?
I would never stop out of the blue and go, wow, we've had a couple tipping points. But when I think about all the businesses, I could say that with absolute certainty, there were clear tipping points. Whether it was, COVID for LensDirect, that was a tipping point for us. We went from here to here. Even more recently, we've made some really great partnerships and SEO. That was another big tipping point for us this year. So I think it does this, a lot of it.
Inflection points, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like you hit these random
I would never have thought about it unless you said that. But there were, even with the magazine business, there was clear, and I said it earlier, without even knowing those were tipping points, December of 2009, that was a tipping point for me in that business.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of companies that they try to manufacture tipping points. So they'll try to buy it. So if you look at SG1, you see it on every single podcast, right? It's like drink your greens, or whatever it is. And I feel like they're trying to manufacture a tipping point by paying big bucks to get something to happen for their brand. Now they're having supposedly financial issues because they've spent way too much money. And then there's other alternatives that are better that are coming into their space, right? So there's other Ryan Alovises that are taking SG1 and they're ruining them. And they're going in there like an archaeologist and they're saying there's some issues with this brand. They're spending so much money. Same thing with Peloton, another good example. I tried to buy their tipping points. I think the best tipping points happen naturally for a brand. COVID you can't control that. That's a natural tipping point. SEO, you mentioned SEO. For me, it was retention with Sam's business when he took over retention for my company. That was a tipping point for me, but I didn't know that was going to be a tipping point. I didn't pay for a tipping point. It just happened.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think you could buy your tipping point. I think your tipping point happens when you're not looking, and you work hard. Yeah, and it's the result of all of the things, not you buying a spot on a radio commercial. To me, that's just marketing, right? That's customer acquisition, and you could grow your business with those things. Like, obviously you can. Like, we're looking to do Sirius Radio right now.
It's not like that, like a rocket, right? If I can verbalize like what a tipping point would be or look like in any matter, let's say in this case it's entrepreneurship, right? There is a lot of gray matter to someone who's just starting, and you don't know what you don't know, right? It's all gray matter around your mind. But when you compound activities in a specific direction, you start to reduce that gray matter. Oh, I learned something here. Oh, I learned something there. And it's just a compounding of these little iterative learnings of actions that you take in a specific direction that lead to these little inflection points over a period of time. So it's like a volume of effort multiplied by the scale of time. This is something Alex Hormozy says. I love it. He says, success is literally just volume of effort multiplied by time horizon. If you can get the two in the right place and multiply them together, you are naturally going to go through those iterations, right? And it's like you said, Ryan, people just go for it and then they just don't see success in the first 5 minutes. And then they kind of just be like, this isn't for me. Also golden handcuffs, when you climb in that corporate ladder, it's like you said, right?
Yeah, you got a mortgage, you have kids. Yeah, it's hard. If you're going to be in entrepreneurship, I really beg, do it during college, after college, when you don't have responsibilities. I couldn't stress that enough. It's probably the single most important thing to tell an entrepreneur, in my opinion. I think it's the single most important thing. Do it when you could just focus and you don't have any other noise. But that's my thought. Sam, I think what you said was really smart. It's a lot of little things over the course of a long time that suddenly have become the big thing. And I think that's really smart, and that's a great call.
Sam, I want to talk about LensDirect because we have 10 minutes left, and I really want to understand. Ryan, can you just tell us a little bit about LensDirect for the viewers that don't know anything about it?
Yeah.
What makes it so unique? Why are you so successful?
So LensDirect, we're an online retailer in the vision care space. But what makes it unique is not that we were an online retailer in the vision care space. We've been around for years. As I shared earlier, it was launched in 1992. I took it over in 2009. From 2009 to 2020, it was a contact lens company. Just a contact lens company. That's all. And, in about 2020, right before COVID, I bought a machine, a big machine, to go into the optical business, which has much better margin than contact lenses. You get recurring revenue with contact lenses and low margin, but with optical, you get high margin and obviously no recurring revenue. So they're just different. So I buy this big and expensive machine that I can't afford. And I throw it into the office. I hire people that do things that I don't know. And suddenly COVID hits, and LensDirect, it was not even about making money anymore. It was about how do we actually service the customer? It was some big thing. So in 2020, LensDirect went from being a contact lens company to being a vision care company. And from about 2020, 2024, where we are today, I would say LensDirect, what makes it really special, absolutely, is that we are the only company in our space that is an all-encompassing vision care company where you can get your contact lenses, where you can get your eyeglasses, your sunglasses, where you can get new lenses for your glasses called lens replacement, which no one does. But beyond this being the all-encompassing, I've never raised $1 I've never raised any money. We don't have any investors. It was brick by brick. It was a lot of small things that became a big thing. And, it's a lot of reinvestments. It's a lot of technology build outs. I love it. I always say anyone can buy a customer. It takes a great company to keep a customer. And that's what LensDirect is. I spend a whole lot of time nurturing those relationships and being frontline. And so that's what LensDirect is. We're a vision care company that happens to also sell amazing customer service.
That's incredible, man. Appreciate you sharing that. And Ryan, in your journey to becoming an entrepreneur and running LensDirect, right? What would you say are the top 5 skills that you picked up that allowed you to really grow LensDirect to where it is today?
Top 5 skills.
Yeah.
I think
order.
endurance. Yeah, there's no order. Believe me, I'm not smart enough to put them in order. I'm just going to throw them out. Endurance is one of them. I think endurance is critical. It takes a lot of time. You need that stamina. Bad days are all around you. So you got to keep pushing forward. 2, I would say, and this is something I definitely live by, is entrepreneurship is patience meets impatience, right? Like you need to be so impatient, but you also kind of have to be really patient. So it's this weird conundrum, mix of both. So that's actually now 3 things: endurance, patience, and patience. You have to be realistic. Also, like, I think, I want to set the world on fire, but I also need to kind of take it down a notch and build this business thoughtfully. And then the 5th thing is actually the opposite of being realistic. I think you got to be fucking crazy. I think you have to absolutely definitively believe that you could do it. And there's no world of failure, as we discussed. So, you're probably thinking the 5 things he just said, 4 of them are opposites of one another. And I think that's kind of what entrepreneurship really is. Patience meets impatience. Realistic meets unrealistic. You got to be mental and you also have to be sound. I don't know. It's this whole fucked up.
It's so funny you say that. Literally, Dan, I was about to say, when I had the first episode with Dan himself, he said you have to be 20% crazy. And you listed out 5 things, one of which is crazy. And that's exactly 20% crazy. So there is really a synergy here in that you've got to be 20% fucking crazy and just do outlandish shit that you just got to throw something at the wall and most of it won't stick. But that one thing that will is what's going to get you inflection point. Another thing you said was impatient and patience. I think Gary Vee hit it really nicely. He says you've got to be so impatient in the micro, but patient in the macro. So in the small frame of things, you got to be hella impatient, right?
That's a much more brilliant and thoughtful way of saying it. And he has a way of doing that. So I'm not surprised that it was him that made it sound better.
Yeah. So it's like in the short term, you got to just get stuff done. It's all about how fast you can ship your ideas. And in the long term, you got to just wait because nothing happens overnight. It does for some people, but if you're going to use that as your barometer, you're going to live.
Yeah, lightning is not striking, guys. It just isn't. If it is, more power to you. But one thing that was always important as well was this whole fake it till you make it thing. Honestly, like I remember when we launched Magazine Discount Center, I could probably find it. There's a press release that says I'm the youngest CEO in the history of CEOs. And I remember when I did that and I would have my meetings with the publishers, they, years later, after I sold them the business, they would laugh with me. But at the time, they were kind of laughing at me like this little kid, this 22-year-old kid is sending out press releases that he's the youngest CEO in the world. I mean, it is comical now, but at the time, I'm like, yeah. I'm the man. Like, it's just such a funny thing, man.
So could that 20% crazy be confidence? Just like overconfidence?
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
Way over. Because you kept saying today that every time you were starting a new business, you felt like you could do it better than everybody else. Was that your 20% crazy?
Oh, for sure. You have to be, that's a smart way to do it. I think that crazy could be unrelenting, completely, imaginary level of confidence, right? Like it could be like, I definitely think I've always had that where there's no way it's not going to work. I'm going to figure it out. I could do it better than that guy. So sure, maybe that's what it is, because that allowed me to be, I guess, crazy, right? Like, because you have to be. What was your crazy?
So I had to manufacture my crazy, which is why Sam and I were laughing when you gave us 5 examples and 20% of your examples were crazy. I am not a crazy person. You know me personally, so you probably maybe think I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. I'm very pragmatic and rational, and that's just the way my parents raised me. And so that's through osmosis, like you were saying that your father was an entrepreneur. My parents are entrepreneurs, and I would just sit in the back seat and listen to them go through everything so pragmatically. So I grew up that way, and I realized that I was not going to make it at the level that I wanted to make it if I stayed where I stayed. So I decided to keep my 80% that was me, and literally create a 20% of crazy that I can become this amazing inventor that's going to change the health industry. And that was, I had to actually pretend to be crazy and start doing crazy things.
I would have liked to see that in like a movie, your iteration of like you looking in the mirror and be like, all right, this is it. Like, let's get fucking crazy. Let's get the war paint on and stuff.
Like the Joker. Yeah. That's what I like. The first Joker, not the second one, that stinks. But the first movie, there was a scene where he's like looking in the mirror and he's doing that. That was
you see it. He was the laugh. Yes.
Yeah, that was basically what I had to do, and I did it, and it worked. But I looked at everyone that I knew that was successful, like people like you, and I was like, they've got a 20% crazy. I grew up with these, like Ryan and I, we know each other. Ryan grew up with my wife, so I've known him for a long time, and I always was envious of his 20% because I'm like, how do I get that? He's got that naturally. He's always had that since he was a kid.
I drink crazy in the morning. I smother myself in it. What you said, one more thing, and I don't even know how much time we have. It might be coming to an end soon, but I think our parents' generation were allowed to be, pragmatic and traditional and conservative. This is the 1980s and 90s, and you could literally open up a hardware shop or an ice cream shop, and suddenly you were making money and you could pay your bills. 2024, shit's different. I don't think that works anymore. It just doesn't. And I think generationally, there's a different mindset. These are the children of post-World War II, right? These are the boomers. They didn't have crazy in them. They had be smart, show up to work every day, wear that suit and tie, and get it done. Things have changed, and we are the byproduct of that change.
I have this theory. It's not I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I think it's true, but maybe you can tell me because you have more experience than I do in this area. I feel like the algorithms are preventing those tipping points from happening more than they would. Like I sort of feel like when I do my Facebook ads and my Google ads, even though Castleflex is growing at such an amazing pace, I feel like if this was pre-iOS 14, this would be a $1 billion company right now. And I feel like it doesn't matter what I do. The algorithm doesn't let me they let you win, but not enough. It's like, I almost feel like it's almost like a slot machine.
Oh, it's like the devil's advocate.
Control.
Devil's advocate. Taste, but don't touch.
Yeah.
In the movie with Al Pacino.
Do you ever wonder, like, let's say I have 2,000 people coming to my website every day. Why can't I have a day that's 100,000? That's what it used to be. There's something would happen.
It's controlled.
It's so controlled, and Facebook will never let me get 100,000 people to my site.
It's a result of that channel, though. I think that those channels inherently are controlled. You spend more, you get more. When you go to the world of actual TV or Sirius radio, it is less controlled. You have less data around it, but you could make a great commercial, right, with your better half, Dan, the pretty one, with Carly doing Castleflex, and suddenly she says something and the world sets on fire. I think that is a lot less controlled, and you have those opportunities for tipping points. Facebook, Instagram, the reason it works is because it's measured and calculated and ROAS driven, and you get what you give. That's that world. So you're not wrong. It's conspiracy, but also it's controlled, and maybe that's also why we like it, because we know if we put $10 in, we're getting 50 back. You're not getting that with TV. You're rolling dice.
So this is a great example of where I'm in. So I'm going to ask you your advice on this. So even though I have my 20% crazy and building all these devices and patenting them and launching them globally, and there's a lot of 20% there. When it comes to my ad spend, it's 100% rational and pragmatic, and it's through the Googles and the Metas and the YouTubes, for example. But I am missing that other like X factor where things could really take off and be less controlled. So what are you saying, that you think I at some point need to start going into serious, or what are you recommending for me?
Yeah, I mean, we're going through that right now. We're going through what you're saying. Absolutely. We've I don't want to say exhausted social, but we've definitely really done a number on social. Paid search, you can always spend more. And that's actually more of I would say, like, the opportunity for paid search is really great. And I don't want to say it's, infinite, but in your world, it could be. Yeah, I think we're battling with that now. And in my head, the only way that we're going to build out certain aspects of our business is beyond social. And it's going to come from a Sirius radio. It's going to come from running those spots on Fox News or CNBC. It's the why you should replace the lenses in your frames. And I know that if I do what we're doing now, it's going to be like this. But I know if I do something unique, it may be, or it also could just not work. But I think it's going to go like that. So yeah, I think you got to be able to step outside the box. I think you need to be able to do something different. And in 6 months, hopefully I have good news for you. And I'm like, hey, dude, Sirius Radio works. I think also you're selling such a premium product. By the way, can I tell you guys something? Do you want your brain to explode right now? Are you ready for this shit? Yeah.
There we go.
In my office, I use this. I use my CastleFlex maybe once every 2 days, 3 days, and I do it while I'm working. I'm literally stretching and doing it. But this was not planned. Obviously, like, I looked down and went, "Oh my god!" It either looks like this or it looks like this.
It's got mine behind me as well, just continuously. Always,
was that good? I
there.
thought that was great. Yeah, I think Dan's product is the absolute premium product, which helps a lot and makes things somewhat challenging in the world of direct response. Direct response is somewhat inherently built on free trials, money back guarantee, and blah, 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 blah. Dan doesn't do that. Dan's like, my shit is so good, I'm not doing any of those corny things. There might be a point in Dan's evolution of CastleFlex where he has to stop almost and go, maybe I should try to play in that game, because that game could be that tipping point. And I could be wrong. I could be right. I have no idea. But that's how I'm looking at Sirius Radio for LensDirect. We got to get in there. We got to get different eyeballs. I can't keep showing the same people in the ad for contact lenses. Let's go wild here. Connect TV is another example. I don't know if you've played around with it. Connected TV now is better than ever. It's a great medium. I love it, and it's measured.
Explain more what you mean by connected TV. I've never heard of it.
Advertising on Hulu when you're at home watching it, advertising on Netflix when you're home watching it for all the people that have freemium models. You could do a 60-second video on connected TV, and you could target people at home watching the fitness channel or the golf channel, people that have back pain, this, and you could spend X. There's a clear ROAS and acquisition cost, and it's the equivalent of paid search and paid social, but for people watching TV at home. And we've done it before. We're about to really ramp it up again. I think connected TV is just phenomenal.
Hey, Ryan, I'd love your thoughts on something for CastleFlex specifically, right? It's just that something I thought of right when you were speaking. In the movie about McDonald's, where the guy goes up to Ray Kroc and he says, "Hey man, you're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business," right? When it comes to CastleFlex, there's a part of me inside that just thinks, Dan, you're not in the DTC business. You're in the info product business. You want to lead with your subscription potentially. And CastleFlex is just a tool. Like that product you have, like Back to Life or whatever it's called. Like they scale to like some ridiculous numbers through purely on info on how to like fix people, right? maybe that's the play. Like less on the product, more on the info on how to fix yourself, with the product being just the upsell of fries.
It's really funny you say that. Now I'm kind of thinking, because Castle Flex to me, like, I remember the feeling when I would watch those infomercials and people standing and they're dancing, blah, blah, get the tape. I could so see Castle Flex going in the infomercial, 30 days free, get this video with your Castle Flex, like get this DVD on stretching and blah, blah. Like, I think you just hit something really interesting, which sort of plays into the connected TV, but your idea was much more fun. Like, I could see it. I could fully see Castle Flex doing a modern times or even a play on the traditional like infomercials, but with Castle Flex, getting that DVD with every order now. Dan Castle. What I also will say, I think Dan doesn't give himself enough credit. I think he should be frontline telling the customers, I'm Dan Castle, and this is why you should get a Castle Flex today. And I don't know, I wish I saw that because I would order another one.
It's funny you say that. My marketing team just said that to me last month. And so when I went to LA for a family trip, they showed up at my hotel with cameras and they're like, we're doing founder content. I know you don't like it, but we're doing it. And they made me do all this content and now they're just about to start.
I could see the video of different sports and someone going into a room and videoing, and it's a physical therapy table, and you being the person with maybe an athlete or two in the video, and showing people how to properly use the Castle Flex and why it is the most incredible thing, and order today and get that free DVD, and we'll throw an extra mini Castle Flex with every order. I could see that working brilliantly for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it. It's a little outside my comfort zone. I like to be behind the scenes, but
why not get your 20% crazy, in that motherfucker.
I gotta get back. I gotta get
that tipping point.
So Ryan, our favorite question of the day, right, is for all of our viewers listening, if there is one thing that you'd like to impart on them, something that they wouldn't find in a book from Ryan Alovis, what would that be?
I don't know. I think my advice is it's going to suck. It's going to suck, honestly. And I think you should find joy in the suck. It's going to be tough. And, years later, you'll be on a podcast with two very handsome men and you'll be telling them the advice. And it's going to suck, and that is all right. Keep working and keep pushing. It's the little things, as we said, it's the little things that when you do them and you show up every day and you multiply that, it does become the big thing. And I think you're better than you think, honestly. And now that's two different things, but you are. I think we're all better than we give ourselves credit for. I think we can take the chance. I think we can win. And winning has different, there's measuring sticks that are different, right? Like winning to me, my win might be different than your win or Sam's win or Dan, whatever it is. It's not this like, I'm a billionaire, I won. Winning is so many different things to so many different people, and that's completely okay. So, be okay with the tough stuff. You're better than you think, and make sure when you win, it's not compared to other people. Like, be happy, and that's it. Like winning to you is different than winning to other people, and that's all right.
Ryan, you sure have a way with words, my friends, and quite frankly, I'm a bit upset that I have to hit the stop button and end this podcast because I'm like, dude, there's so much more I want to ask you and pick your brains on, because you have a very incredible way to resonate with people, I feel, man.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the business stuff. This was good. This was pure like passion, and this was lovely.
Yeah, man, 100%. And I'm pretty sure there's so much more that you have to give, and I just feel like I'd love to get you back at some point. But amazing podcast. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this was fun.